Okay, so yeah, so we've been touching on loneliness lately more and more, and I wanted to devote some time specifically to that, to kind of an inner exploration to what it is and what to do with it. And one of the funny things, and I've been talking to David about this back and forth over the past few weeks, is that people can be around other people and feel very lonely and be by themselves and not feel lonely at all. There is this weird thing where when we try to define loneliness, we think about it as being by yourself with no one else. Yet it's weird because there's situations where we seem to have people around us, not just people around us who we don't know, even the people around us who we do know, who know us very intimately, but we can still feel alone. But then there's moments where we can be on our own and we're not bothered by that. We actually we feel held, we feel like there's something there. So, and then that same person, right, when around other people might then start feeling alone again. So we're going to try to figure out what that is and kind of work at a process for for chipping away at that and trying to like start moving in a direction of not alone. Um, First of all, just to like step talking about this, loneliness is, I think, one of the deeper things that people who don't talk about because it's very scary. Um, People like talking about success, like talking about like different things that might happen in their life, positive or negative, but it's, I think, a hard thing to talk about. And I think part of it is for this very reason, because there doesn't seem to be a clear solution. You could say, oh, I was so lonely and then I found someone, but you still might be lonely even if you found that person, which is weird. It's easy to say, oh, I was single and then I found someone, oh, this relationship didn't work and I got another one. But this deeper issue, it's almost so beneath the surface that I think it's hard to touch upon it because what is it and what's the solution for it? It's kind of hard to grasp. So, um, so I think it's important to get like a head wrap around this at a higher level. What is it? Why do we even need to not be alone? What is the need? What's lacking?
Is
And
it?
what was that? Oh, okay. So like, what is it that's lacking? Wait, did you want to say something? Did someone want to say something?
I think David
No,
Matthews.
we're good. I didn't know if you were asking the question or if it was a rhetorical question. So then I backed down.
Well, if you want to say something, go ahead.
I mean, I think it's more survival and primal in nature, because back when things were more dangerous, in order to survive, you needed a group and you needed company. And isolation and being alone meant almost death.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. There's something very primal about it, but it seems to come up for us even in situations where the survival is not an issue. Um, I think people are sometimes willing to put themselves in harm's way just to not feel alone or avoid that pain. Um, so I think there's definitely a primal element to it for sure. It's baked in, but I believe that there's something deeper going on here, which kind of cuts to the solution, which I think will kind of cut directly to what I believe the solution is. At a high level, what's going on is I think loneliness, the issue of loneliness is that everything could be going really well, but meaningless. That sits at the heart of it, is that the possibility that I could have checked off all the boxes, but still something feels completely empty. There is that nagging, like this thing that's nagging, that's just something is just wrong. And I think that this is I believe that that issue is what makes us godly creatures. It's what makes us uniquely very, very special. That we could have everything we want, but something feels off unless we have this deeper thing that we can't even put our hands on. That is a really, really, in my opinion, it's a very divine quality. The challenge of loneliness, I think, is a challenge to every individual to find a divine spark within them, to find something about themselves that is very, very special, something that you can't necessarily put your finger on, but there's just this thing, you can't even explain it. And growing up, every time I had a tremendously important experience with something, at 12 it was snowboarding, and 17 it was spirituality. Even more recently, and now what I'm doing in coaching, I found that I cannot explain. Part of me turns on, it comes alive, and that pain goes away.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Because your audio went a little bit off.
Okay, so where did you hear me till?
So you said that recent, no, it was just for a few seconds, but it was an important second.
It's just that, like, I found in my life that when something came by, at 12 it was snowboarding. When I was 17, I found spirituality. Recently, I found what I'm doing now when I'm coaching. It's just something turns on, something comes alive, and then that pain seems to just go away. What is that? And how do we start to? So to me, the process of breaking loneliness, of breaking the pain of loneliness, it's a process of realizing that no matter how much we have what we think we want, there's something deeper, and we're going to explore that. We're going to explore what about us is really, really unique. We figured life out. We thought we had everything we wanted, but no, there's something else. It doesn't necessarily have to do with whether we found this person or we didn't. It doesn't necessarily have to do directly with how we feel around certain people. It's more about, are we tapping into something that we're meant to about ourselves? Like, the time has come for us to find something deeper within ourselves, and are we going for that? Or are we kind of lost and we don't even know, or we're distracting ourselves with external things so that we don't hear what's going on inside, because we don't necessarily know how to take on that call. I think that a lot of us have a calling, and I've been seeing this more and more, is that people very often have a calling inside of them for something deeper. They know there's a truth, but it's like scary. It's almost, how do I do that? How do I go? And then it's like this kind of running away, running again to the distractions around us, to kind of to just, because that we don't want to hear that. But that's the pain of loneliness. I think it's just our divinity calling to us to do something more, to experience ourselves in a deeper way. And what I try to do is, I don't think that the process of getting to that is, I believe, needs to be simplified. It needs to be made very simple and easy. And it also needs to be flexible, because I think every person has their own way in which they're going to explore themselves, in which they're going to find this thing within them. But what I have is different frameworks to start out with, to use in order to look for it, in order to start peeking away, trying to peek into it and hear this inner voice. And there was once a story where, people were walking and like someone was like, "Did you hear that?" And the guy's like, "No." It's like, "You didn't hear it?" And there was just this silence. But it's this ability to start listening and to try to hear something deeper. What is that within us that we can start to get into? And often the trap is we think it means that we have to do something drastically like big, and our whole life is wrong and is a mess. That's not true. It's usually just little changes that we can make. So I'll tell a story, and then we're going to get into one or a few of the frameworks for actually dealing with this. But so there was a guy, and he had put his whole life into a body of work, and he had written a lot of stuff down. And then he found a spiritual mentor who basically taught him that a totally different way of looking at life. And he realized that everything that he had worked on till then was like, it almost bothered him because it completely lacked his new perspective and everything that he had learned. So he took everything that he wrote and he burned it. And then he went back to his teacher and he told his teacher what he did. And his teacher was like, "Well, why'd you do that? There was some good stuff in there." So, the process is less about burning what we've done and throwing it away, but it's more about actually looking at what we've done and finding the gold in it, finding the diamonds, finding the things that we've done that are really special and unique. So what's the framework for doing it? So I think the best way for people to start exploring themselves and trying to hear this deeper call inside and ultimately not feel alone because they're following this deeper part of themselves is to learn how to be with themselves in a much more curious and experimental way. What I mean by that is to start being more gentle with the things that we are trying to do in our life, and put more focus into how we observe ourselves and less about the success or failure of our particular actions. It is much more valuable to pay attention to how we're doing something than to put so much force and energy into making sure it gets done right. And this is something that I learned a lot from reading and listening to Anat Baniel. Anat Baniel is, she I think is based in California, and she does a lot of work with children, helping children with cerebral palsy or autism or many different issues. And she does these really miraculous things with kids, and parents come to her and they see their child is not moving, and they're like, "What are you going to do to help them move?" And she's like, "I don't work with the muscles, I work with the brain." But what she does with these kids is she does very simple movements with them, but she does them in a way where the kids for the first time pay attention, not to how well they're doing what they're doing, but they pay attention to themselves as they're doing it. Once you take a person, especially a child, because they can change so rapidly, and you help them pay attention to themselves as they're doing what they're doing, then a lot of shifts start to happen. There's a lot of movement. And a lot of confidence and a lot of explosion of growth happens from that. even on a neurological level. She talks about how it's like millions of connections in the brain per second. She has a very, it's at this point scientific based approach to this, but it's all about doing things a little bit slower with less force. And what's really important to change, to make small changes in what we're doing. One of the ways this can be applied to life is something that I teach, which is called the 8 areas of life. It's where instead of making these really big, hard goals, we look at all the areas of life, which I call the 8 areas of life, and we play with them. And we watch what's happening to ourselves as we play in these different areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open up a little bit what this looks like so you can get a visual. And then for everyone here, I'll share. What I'll do is I'll send you this spreadsheet. But what it is that you let me share my screen. You start taking these 8 major areas of life, and I'll go through what they are soon. And you take yourself through an exercise where you look at it, and you're not trying to necessarily force a change, but you're just exploring what you would like it to look like. How could it actually look a little bit different? And what would that mean to you? So it just starts with basically that. What would it look like if this area of life was a little bit different? And we don't get kind of hung up on that. It's another day you look at a different area of life. So over here is 8 different areas of life, and we'll go through what they are soon. But right now I'm just going to leave that a little bit later. And it's kind of every day going a little bit more into another area, looking at that. What would that look like if it was different? What can I try? What's a small thing I can try to tweak this? And just coming back to this on most days of the week. So in front of you, a synopsis of each area of your life. And then you just think about, how could I play with this? Not how am I going to force myself to change this? Not like I don't do any exercise and I'm going to get up every morning and do an hour. No, it's, I don't know, what could I do today for a few minutes that'd be a little bit different? And what would that feel like? And then a little bit, and then what would it be if I did something a little bit different in my emotions or my relationships, or what, we'll go through the different areas soon. But just doing that has this profound impact that it's hard to describe until you've experienced it. When you actually stop getting tunnel vision and being so focused on the success of what you're doing, and instead you take a step back and you start to observe yourself as you're doing things, then change starts happening in a very weird and mysterious way. But it's pretty profound. I've seen this with myself, and I've seen this with the people I work with. It's really, really cool. And it's super not hard to do. The only thing that would keep you from doing this is almost the intensity of how well it works is a little bit frightening sometimes. But it's just a really calm way to look at your life and just start to, instead of forcing your way to have to accomplish a goal, actually just play with what it would be like if you did it, and what is one little thing you can start just playing with, and then seeing what happens from there. So we have a little over a half hour left. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share with you now what these 8 areas are. I'm going to give you a couple of questions to start answering in them. And we're just going to kind of maybe start, we're just going to, I don't know, we're going to have like this jam session now where we're just going to start playing with this together. Okay. So I'm thinking of doing this on a Google Doc. So I'm going to open up a new document. And I have a feeling that this might help. If it doesn't help, then just let me know. But I'm going to share my screen again. So, okay, so the first area of life is the physical domain, the physical parts of life. And it's our internal physical, which is our health. And then what comes after that, I'm going to increase the font here so it's easier to see. And then what comes after that is what's going on around us in our physical environment, how we're interacting with our environment. From a lot of people, you know, finances and career is like the major thing here. You know, health is typically, you know, sleep, diet, and exercise is where we kind of play with our health. And in our environment, it usually is dependent on our finances, because if we have more money, then we can typically afford to create the changes in our environment, our physical environment that we want. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It could just be like, my room's a mess and I'm going to clean it up. But just the quality of our physical, our internal physical is our health, and our external environment is just our life as it exists on the physical plane. Then we have emotions or feelings. You know, what is our anxiety levels? What are our stress levels? How often do we feel peace? How often do we feel calm? How often do we feel joy? Our internal emotional state is just, you know, it's like a whole nother world. Things could be totally fine on the physical level, but then inside in emotions, it's kind of be like, what's going on? Yeah. And then in the external part is our relationships. So when how we're relating, how our feelings, with our feelings, we're relating to the people around us, the people in our life. It's like a whole nother world. Because we could have a very, you know, we could be calm inside, or we could have a certain way we are inside, but with people around us, it can just be a mess, and vice versa. We can keep things all nice with the people around us, but then we can have things going on inside that are kind of nagging. The next thing is our minds, the intellectual place. It's like a whole nother world. Our education. Now, where our mind is at, what we understand, what we know about ourselves and the world, you know, is people who just devote their whole life just to learning and studying and figuring things out. And on the external, that is the way in which we are expressing our ideas with other people. Because we could be very brilliant inside, but then we could be also, but then we could be inept in terms of conveying our ideas and getting people to understand us and see our side and our way of things. This is a like completely underrated place in life, but there's so much breakthrough that happens when people actually learn to speak what's on their mind, learn to actually share their ideas. There's a lot of fear around that. The next level of life is what's not these three. It's the parts of our life that is, we don't understand it. We can't really like say it's an emotion. It doesn't have any physical ramifications, but it's our purpose, our spirituality, why we feel like we're, how we connect with something that's deeper. Could be meditation, it could be prayer, it could be, one person, it was his cold shower every morning. It was just, he felt something when he did that. If you guys heard of Wim Hof, I mean, he'll talk about how his God is the cold. So we all have a weird connection to something which we can't explain. Something that gives us a sense of purpose, like an inner sense of purpose. And the eighth thing is, what's our purpose in the world? What's our impact and the outreach that we have to people around us? I don't think there's another domain besides these eight in which we operate. I think whatever we're doing is operating on one of these eight levels. And each of these eight levels are very different one from the other, because they're either internal or external, or they're physical, intellectual, or spiritual. And those things are very different from each other. But I can't think of anything in our life that's not one of these eight. Comprehensive way of looking at ourselves and the different domains in which we operate. And then we can take this and we can start looking at ourselves and asking, where can I go here? What would I like to be different in this area, and why? And what would that do? And where is something that I can start? What's something that I can start doing to play around with it? The thing that we start doing to, for example, so if I would take my health, right? I think I need to exercise more. Like, and I'm saying this like honestly, like I think I need to exercise more, and I think I need to do certain exercise that would be better for me. But this week I did it like once, for a few minutes, and it was great, but it was only once. So to me, like, that's something that I would want to play around with. Why do I want it? What's it going to do for me? I think I'll feel better. I'll have more energy. I think that I'll just be more confident that, as I continue to get older, I'll be able to keep up with my kids and I'm not going to hurt myself. And here's the kicker. This is where we start to play which is picking a small thing to do every day, most days, even some days. But what's a small, easy thing to do that kind of gets me in the mood to do this? So the issue with exercise is, like, I'm very busy and I don't necessarily have time, and I'm often not in the mood. So I'm not necessarily going to get up and just do it. But if I have something every day or most days that gets me in the mood, that gets me kind of excited to do it, this is where the playing comes in, then that would be something I can start doing. So even days when I don't do the full exercise, I just started playing with it. So I have someone, and it's like, for her, it's just to do one plank or one push-up or one thing. It's just like one small thing that I can do that's like not a big deal at all. When we find that one little small thing to do that's no big deal, and we start doing those things, then we are able to, that's when we're not using force. So if I force myself to exercise when I don't want to, I might accomplish that goal, but I'm not really doing much in terms of the bigger picture. But if I find something that is as close to exercise as I can get, but it requires no force in doing it. I can do it with minimal effort. But this does meaningfully get me closer to exercising, and I do that and I note how it feels, then really, really profound changes can happen. And I'm not just talking about the changes where I'll be exercising and be healthier. I'm talking about what we're talking about in terms of the topic of this, which is the loneliness, the deeper stuff. Because I'm going to start getting more in touch with myself as I'm doing this. Because I'm not just forcing an action, I'm observing myself as I am getting more into doing this. It's that relaxed doing, and trying different things and noticing how it feels and watching ourselves as we do it. That's where the magic is. It will create better results practically, especially over time, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the deeper impact it's going to have on your sense of who you are, your connection with that divine part of you, that deeper part of you, and your overall change of your psyche and the way in which you are and how you be will change. Those are much more profound than the exercise. The exercise is important, but it's not nearly as impactful as that. But that's what you get when you look at a part of life in this kind of a way. And when you start doing it in all the different other layers of your life, that introduces a variation. It introduces different perspectives that you're going to get on yourself. To see is that similar feelings, similar ideas come up as you go through different areas of your life. What is impacting your desire to exercise and maybe getting in the way of your exercise might also be getting in the way of the way you express yourself with people. These things will, when I work with my clients, at some point we start noticing how the same things keep on coming up. And when they see that, they get this distance, they get this space that they never had before to actually see themselves and step out of a role that they had been stuck in for their whole life. And that's when people start to just become alive, because they're getting bigger, they're expanding, they're not just being this tiny version of themselves, they're opening up to greater capacities. So yes, will this program help all these 8 areas of life? It will help them, but that's not the point. It's important to keep that in mind, that that's not the point. The point is we're trying to get to something deeper. But yes, on the way, it will actually create a very positive impact in all these areas. So what I like to do is actually here, or more you can get involved. So what I can do is, let's take a break. Let's take like a 10-minute break. I'm gonna leave this screen up. What I can do is I can also give everyone a copy of this. I'll put it in the chat. Just take 10 minutes to kind of start. There isn't a lot of time to like go through all the questions and all the stuff that I would normally do if I was really, we were doing this for like hours and hours, but just start looking at this list and start just brainstorming of where you could go in the different areas of your life. Not brainstorming in terms of where you want to be in 10 years from now, brainstorming in where you could be 10 minutes from now if you would just make a small little change. What's a small, tiny thing you can do? One guy, it's just he wants to eat healthier. He's just going to start making his healthy breakfast at night before he goes to bed. Just these little things, these little stupid things. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to, I'm going to put them in the chat. I'm also going to give you each a copy of this Google Doc. You can make a copy for yourself. and start taking your own notes. And we're just going to take a break for 10 minutes. Then we're going to come back and we'll talk about what it was like to start thinking of our life in this way.
So I just want to clarify, I just want to make sure I understand it. We're going to think about each of those 8 areas and think of it just a small thing that we can do in each of those 8 areas.
I wouldn't go so fast to start. You might get there. You might get to what can you do. First, start just dreaming. Start just creatively thinking about what would I even like it to be like? What could be a little bit different? What would it feel like? What would it feel like if it was a little bit different? Once you can feel this different feeling about what it would be like if it was a little bit different, then you can start asking, what's one little thing what's one stupid different thing that I can do that feels good to me? You know, for me, it's just, I don't know. One of my things, I like pick up a guitar and practice guitar for 5 minutes. That has meaning to a certain area of life for me. I don't know why, it just, this other guy, he prepares his breakfast when he goes to sleep, just 5 minutes. He makes this stupid little chia seed and puts it in the fridge. One person is just, I'm going to do a 1-minute plank. That's my thing for my exercise. We're not talking about like moving mountains here. We're not even talking about like actual, like long, like, you know, the habit of doing it for 15 minutes, a half hour a day. We're talking about these little tweaks, teeny little tweaks that just give us a feeling, that give us this feel good thing of like, yeah, I like this. This feels good to me. It feels good to start embracing exercise, even if I'm not doing it for 15 minutes. It feels good to just do one thing. It feels good to just have one healthy meal. It feels good to just do one thing that just is nice. Just stare out the window for a minute and just imagine what it would be like, you know, if you have a nice view where you wake up. Like I have a nice view where I am. So I like to stare out the window for a minute when I wake up. Reminds me of how I want to take care of myself and, you know, it means something to me. It came out of this kind of this process, just dreaming about where would you want your life to be like? What would you want? How would you want it to feel? I know it's a little bit loose.
Well, I'm just trying to understand, in this exercise, are we fantasizing about who and what we want to be? Or are we using this exercise to think of a small thing we can do in each of those areas?
You can take it either one of those ways. Doesn't really matter. Just go one area at a time, and you're not going to have time to do all of them. Just jump around and just start thinking, what would it be like if it was different, or what could I do different? Just play with it. There's no right or wrong answers. Fair enough? Fair enough? Okay. So the doc's in there. If you want your own doc, so when you click on the link of the Google Doc, you click File and make a copy, and you'll have your own. And we're going to come back in 10 minutes and just get some feedback and kind of discussion of what it was like. Cool? Yeah? Good? All right. Okay. I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Take one more minute. Okay. So you turn video back on now if you can. And any feedback on what that was like?
Okay, I'll go. So for health, I thought that I could learn one yoga pose per day, or just focus on learning one pose for that day. And for emotions, I thought that I could listen to a high vibe song and just dance a little bit. And that would make me feel happy and high vibe. And it also kind of crosses over into health, because I'm getting a little bit of exercise by dancing, and it just gets my energy flowing. So there's a little bit of crossover with that one. And then for education and intellect, I said that I could read one section of Think and Grow Rich, and that would be expanding my knowledge and also crossing over a little bit into environment and the physical, financial, material world, because what I learned from that, if I apply it, will help me financially. So those are a few examples of what I came up with.
Cool. And what was it like? What's it like to kind of see that, to see the crossover, to see the overlap, to kind of feel what it's like, how these little things, what did that feel like going through that process?
It feels good because it feels doable. It's not an overwhelming initiative, and it kind of feels good in the sense that it kills two birds with one stone, or that you're accomplishing, all of these aspects of our lives blur with each other. Our emotions affect our relationships. Our emotions affect the way we express ourselves. They all blur with each other. They all affect one another. If we're in poor health, then we're probably going to be grumpy, and that's going to affect our relationships. And, just it all is interconnected. But little tasks that sort of cover multiple areas, those just feel like all the better.
Yeah. What about you, Curtis?
Well, I kind of got through 4 of them, but emotions was one of them that kind of peaks the top of the list. And, I thought if you just pick a random object and stare at it and see how you feel about it for a minute or two, you can kind of determine what kinds of physical objects in your life are attached to your emotions. So if we're figuring out where some of our higher or lower emotions are coming from, then we have an idea of what to look at in our past as far as what is that tied to? How do I, view it differently? And that kind of seemed like a not only doable, but a emotional freeing of things, because when you can label it, you can put something somewhere and it either doesn't bother you as much or doesn't control you as much, or you can move on from it. You know, the other one was the environment, and I'm bad about cleaning stuff, putting everything away, because I've usually got umpteen projects going on. It's just fact of life. It's been that way for a long time. But my room should be cleaned up. And instead of having the projects out, hope I get some of them done, I need to put some of them away just to have a feeling of less overwhelming in my environment. And as I can get rid of some files and some other stuff that I've started to do, but it's, you know, there's a bunch to go through. I'm thinking there's going to be a feeling of separation from present, past, the emotions of the past, and just a lot less overwhelming emotions going on, just knowing that that stuff is gone forever.
Mhm. So I'm hearing that these questions just about looking at these different areas of what's one thing they can do, they seem to be of like stirring up some deep stuff, you know?
Well, it's deep stuff that's there. I know it's there. The files are there, not because they're going to make any difference like they should be able to, because you can't get anybody to listen. But I had to save them for a long time, and it's very emotional to even go through them and get rid of them.
Yeah. I hear that. See, sometimes we push ourselves so hard to do these big things, but the little things in front of us have a lot in them. They're a big deal, especially internally, for what that's going to do for us. You know, it might not look to an outsider like that's such a big deal, but for us, it's a big deal, and it can really change who we are and how we are with ourselves, and it's going to have an impact on how we show up with other people. So thanks for sharing. Good luck with it. I think the other David Matthews is in the meeting or something. He said at 1:30, so I don't think he has anything to say right now. But you guys, anything else? Anything else?
No.
Thank you. Just thank you for this.
You're welcome.
Yep. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I know you're listening. I know you're here. To David Matthews. Okay, well, thanks for coming, Curtis, David, and David. Thank you so much for coming. Clara had an internet laptop issue, so that's why she's not here, but she messaged me about that. But yeah, so have a really good weekend. And if I don't see or speak to any of you before the new year, have a happy new year.
Have a
Thank you.
happy new year.
Yeah,
And if you see Carrie, you can tell her I can understand the internet issue. My computer still isn't up. That's why I'm on my phone.
Yeah. Okay, we should all have good internet next year. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.